is Emma Vanderhayden, and this is going to be a presentation on the reality of conservation. So you might be wondering, what could be so bad about conservation? I mean, all you ever hear about it is that it's great for animals, great for the environment, so is there an actual problem? Yes, there is. Conservation has long been promoted to maintain and grow biodiversity. However, national parks, protected areas, and reserves are disproportionately placed on indigenous lands. In fact, 50% of the protected areas created by conservationists in the 20th century were located on indigenous lands. Most conserved areas do not adhere to indigenous rights or standards because of discrimination and absence of laws and denied legal land rights given to indigenous peoples. In addition to this, governments receive a lot of money to maintain biodiversity from the West, and that money does not have any rules attached, so different NGOs and conservation organizations can spend it pretty much however they want. These unfollowed rules and absent laws lead indigenous people to be at the mercy of conservationists who deny their participation in conservation and deny compensation if they decide to leave the area. This brand of conservation is called fortress conservation, and it is characterized by the exclusion of local peoples, the enforcement by park rangers on the boundaries and rules of the area, and only tourism, hunting, and research done by primarily Westerners or guests is allowed. The placing of parks and protected areas onto indigenous lands has caused many harmful mental, physical, and cultural effects. To begin with mental effects, many indigenous people developed increased anxiety when wildlife reserves opened up next to them and they were set up to live next to huge animals. So let's say a conservation area opened up next to someone's home, they had a lot of elephants, they were sort of scared of those elephants and it caused a lot of anxiety for them. Others feel very powerless because they have no say in what happens to their land and basically just have to do as the conservationists say. The physical effects of conservation include land disposition, which is when indigenous people are kicked off of their ancestral land. It has been estimated that as a result of protected areas, 1 million kilometers of forests, pasture, and farmlands were seized in Africa. And one example, the San Bushmen were kicked off their land and their houses were burned, social services shut down, and water turned off. Another physical effect is limited access to resources. This is because there were bans put on hunting and farming that deny people access to food on their land. So if you actually go hunting on your own ancestral land, you can be arrested or even beaten. The last physical effect is crop breeding, and this occurs when new animals, like those elephants I was talking about, are introduced by conservation efforts and either destroy crops or kill livestock. Cultural effects are very prominent because for indigenous communities, nature is linked to practices and identities. A loss of environment can cause them a loss of cultural identity, ties to nature are broken, and kinship is disrupted because of the end of practices. So if indigenous people were to try to break these rules so they could live their lives as they wished, they are met with extreme force. Enforced illegality is put on people so they become poachers, encroachers, and squatters on their own land. One group of San Bushmen were shot at, arrested, and beaten for simply trying to hunt for food for their families on their ancestral land. Now that we know what the issue is, you might be wondering what the big deal is and why should you care? Well, you should care about conservation's effect on indigenous people because it is a human rights crisis that is actively depriving indigenous people of their livelihood and communities. This extended method of colonialism, where Western powers evict indigenous communities for more land and resources, must end. Fortress conservation has caused extreme losses, suffering, poverty, malnourishment, and despair for so many indigenous groups. This issue does not only deprive people of basic human rights, though, it also constitutes an environmental justice struggle, where indigenous people are taken away from their homes and denied access to the environment, forcing them to bear a disproportionate amount of the consequences from conservation. Now that we understand what's going on and why we should care, I'm going to explain some of the activism indigenous people, scholars, and activists have taken part in. To begin, this issue is framed in a certain way by indigenous people, activists, and scholars to get people informed and to want to join the movement. So these groups of people have framed this issue as a violation of human rights, with people being abused in the name of conservation. Scholars explain that the practice of fortress conservation denies indigenous people their rightful claim to land while also directly harming individuals and communities. One activist describes fortress conservation as a racist, socially unjust concept which alienates local people from conservation. A scholar echoes this thought by saying that by denying rights and expelling indigenous people from their land, conservation is just a way to exterminate indigenous people. Overall, the framing of this issue seems to be that fortress conservation is an extremely horrible practice that causes immense harm to indigenous people. So, how are people trying to solve this problem? The most common remedy for forest conservation seems to be community-based conservation. Community-based conservation is when local communities are involved with the conservation of their own lands while benefiting from compensation and natural resources. This type of conservation also allows for participation in decisions, ownership over resources, and the receival of economic and material benefits. Sometimes the system requires the tourism of outsiders, while other times areas remain untouched by people. This method is popular to promote because of Indigenous communities' effectiveness at cultivating biodiversity. To start, the decline of species happens at a much lower rate on Indigenous land, and forests are better protected from deforestation and degradation on Indigenous lands. We can also see how well Indigenous people take care of land because of the fact that Indigenous land encompasses 80% of the world's biodiversity, hence why a lot of people want to make protected areas on Indigenous lands. Community-based conservation is broad, with several different approaches being available to Indigenous communities. Like I said before, tourism can be a part of this. It doesn't have to be, though. Many groups wish to have the government grant land titles in exchange for the environment, while some wish to just have their access to traditional land and resources reinstituted. Others wish to have customary laws recognized as an effective conservation strategy. Overall, though, most scholars and Indigenous people favor getting granted a land title so individuals can have more freedom when it comes to what they want to do with conservation. There are some positives and negatives when it comes to community-based conservation. With community-based conservation sometimes coming along with the granting of Indigenous people land rights or the ability to traditionally use their land, it seems great. Indigenous communities are able to make their own decisions regarding the environment and take care of it how they like. In addition, community-based conservation has the potential to grant compensation either for the land being used as a tourist base or for keeping the biodiversity great. The money granted from this conservation has sometimes been used to further secure land and development and really just develop the land and the community better. However, there are several downsides to community-based conservation. First, in many initiatives, people are not actively involved in planning and management, not getting enough say in what happens. Second, there is an uneven distribution of economic benefits explained by inequality between Indigenous communities and stakeholders. Stakeholders pretty much continue to hold all the power still. Third, lives are rarely improved, and many communities never benefit financially. So a lot of the money that people say they can make from community-based conservation never really comes to light. Whether the goal is to be granted land rights or to go further with community-based conservation, interested parties have taken action through laws and resolutions, legal remedies, protests, and everyday activism. To start, Indigenous people and other interested parties, such as activists and scholars, have taken their demands to big organizations like the UN, where they achieved a Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which asserts that Indigenous people should use their own resources, control own lands, and have representation in institutions. Second, Indigenous groups have also found the legal route, going to court to fight for access to land, legal right to land, or recognized methods for conservation. In one example, after being faced with a 30-day eviction order to conserve the forest, the Ogiek people and the Center for Minority Rights Development applied to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights for a measure barring Kenya from evicting the Ogiek people. The African court recognized their relationship to the land and held that the African Charter protects property rights and that the Ogiek people have a role in safeguarding the local ecosystems and would not be denied access to land. Unfortunately, though, after task forces were implemented, nothing has happened, and even as recent as in November 2019, the government has still evicted more and more people. Other ways of resistance include protests. Protests seem to be a popular tool to get people's attention and inform the public. In one instance, hundreds of Janu Karuba, which you can see in the picture, have launched an indefinite protest in the Nagarhole National Park in India to demand that authorities stop trying to evict them and recognize rights to the forest. Members of the tribe say they know how to take care of the forest and can do it better, and they don't want any money, all they want is to live free in the forest, with one woman saying, "If the officials come and shoot us, we are ready to die, but not leave the forest." Everyday activism is another type of protest, or kind of resistance, which is practiced when people fear the consequences for overt action and want to do something a little more subtle. So forms of everyday resistance include continuing banned practices like hunting, destroying resources, or fire burning, and these sort of just send a symbol that they're not listening to the conservationists and that their way of life is superior than what the conservationists want them to do. Lastly, people have lodged formal complaints against groups like the UN, where they actually suspended a project because of them. In addition to formal complaints, letters in the form of complaints have also been sent to places like the World Wildlife Foundation, documenting abuses and demanding an end to plans for a new project in park. Indigenous peoples, scholars, and activists have mainly appealed to broad publics, traditional media, the state, and organizations. They've appealed to the broad public by holding protests which not only get attention but also spread valuable information about what's actually going on. Protests seem to work to appeal traditional media too, as a lot of news sites pick up protest stories, and that's a lot of the time where I got the stories of protests were from local news areas and local news media sites. People have appealed to the state by going to the courtroom and directly fighting against discrimination. These cases force the state to listen and get a lot of media coverage, which will put even more pressure on the government. Lastly, people have also appealed to organizations, like I already said, like the UN and the WWF, by demanding resolutions or writing complaints. And so this sort of just gets everyone's attention, since, a high-profile organization like the UN is getting yelled at, so it does give a lot of more attention to their goal. As of right now, it seems that NGOs, the state, and conservationists continue to have all of the power, with the protected areas still being erected on Indigenous peoples' land. Indigenous people continue to fight back by mounting protests and other resistance campaigns, with many already occurring this year. In fact, most of the forms of organizing I included in this presentation have all happened very recently in the past couple of months, showing that people are resisting more than ever, but conservationists just simply aren't listening. So what can you do? There are several ways you can help support Indigenous people and promote justice. First, and most importantly, get informed. I know that before I took this class, I had no idea conservation is bad, and I am positive more people are like that too. It is important to educate yourself so you fully understand the extreme extent of this human rights process and can actively promote the issue. After getting informed, make sure to spread the word. Make sure you send your Indigenous voices while doing this, so if you can, find articles that are written by Indigenous people, or really just elevate what they're saying through social media and stuff like that. But make sure you're spreading all this information that you just learned to your friends and family so more people are aware of this issue. One other important thing you can do is only support community-based conservation initiatives. Before traveling, make sure to look into what protected areas or national parks you're visiting. For example, you should find out who owns this, who's benefiting from it, and whose land this is. A good thing to look out for is if the website says they work with Indigenous communities, or if the area is Indigenous owned. I provided 2 links which have pretty good examples of either Indigenous owned conservation areas or community-based conservation, which you can check out. The last way I propose you get involved is by pressuring the Biden administration. Although a lot of the stuff I talked about today occurred in the international world, conservation still negatively affects people in the U.S. Biden actually made a promise this year to provide tribes with a greater role of care and management of public lands that are significant to tribal nations. Make sure that he stays true to this promise by keeping up on any actions he promotes toward Indigenous communities and reaching out on social media and stuff like that. And that's all. Thanks so much for listening. On this page, I have a link to my Works Cited page where I have all my sources if you want to look into that. It's it's a hyperlinked bibliography. Then I also have my 2 other projects on my TikTok and my Instagram, which I put my usernames right there. Thanks so much.